Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Podcast listeners, Al Martin here, as always, ready to go again. And I have Duncan Curtis. He currently is the SVP, GenAI and AI product and technology at Sama, but he has a history of AI product management at Google, autonomous vehicles at Zoox and Aptiv, even some mobile gaming. I am told that if you lost time with Fruit Ninja, he is the cause of it. So if you spent too much time playing that game, I've got your person here you can blame. So welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you, Duncan. We're going to jump into a few topics today.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It sounds like it's going to be a good, fun time.
It always is, man. It always is. We always have a good time here. Today I've got several specific topics that, looking at your background, I wanted you to help me on, and we'll dive into it, and you can take it wherever you want. But before I do, can you walk us through your journey and ultimately what led you to your current role at Sama?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was straight out of college, had my computer science degree and loved video games. And so started my own company, built that up and sold it off, and then joined Half-Brick Studios to do Fruit Ninja. That kind of got me to, in my own company, got to like 1.5 million players. And I was really proud of that because I was about half the size of my hometown, Brisbane, in Australia. And then in Fruit Ninja, I got to like 200 million players, and that was like 2/3 of the states at the time, and that was huge for me. And then I got a knock on the door from Google, and they said, "Hey, do you want to come do this product management thing?" And I was like, "I don't know what product management is." And they go, "Well, you've been an executive producer and a CEO and an engineer. You know what product management is." I was like, "Okay, sure." So I flew over from Brisbane to Google, worked on the Play Store there, and got up to 1 billion daily active users. Which one of my most proud moments there was when Apple ripped off one of my features replicated the experience of one of my features a year and a half later. That was fantastic. And got up to 1 billion daily active users, and it was the second largest revenue center in all of Google, which was absolutely amazing in my career and loved it. But I looked at myself and said, well, I want to have more purpose in my career. And so I wanted to go do cutting edge technology, and I went to Zoox. But I'd only just been introduced to machine learning and AI at Google because I didn't have it back when I did my computer science degree, showing my age there. And so I took Andrew Ng's online ML course, and in order to get some cred with our engineering teams, I took my Mustang and stuck a phone out the front of it, had a laptop running some algorithms, a drill connected by a wheel to my steering wheel, and I made my Mustang drive itself. And so at Zoox, I went on this mission where it had this great combination of cutting-edge technology with self-driving cars, the idea that I could change the impact of going from 0 to 1 life saved in my career, because my mom and my grandfather are both doctors, and here I've been playing around in video games for my whole career. And the third one was it was great. The third thing was they were building an all-electric fleet, so I really loved that. And really loved my time at Zoox. And I wanted, when Sama reached out, it was the opportunity to have more impact on AI. So at the moment at Zoox, I was helping build AI for one company, but now I get to work across the whole auto industry. I get to work on GenAI models. I get with some of the leading models in the world. We've done some amazing stuff for the world where we've tracked elephant butts, which is an entire story in and of itself, to help fight poaching in East Africa. And we help people out of poverty in East Africa and connecting them to the digital economy, because we believe that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. And that's kind of led me to being here, like heading up our product engineering and machine learning teams at Sama, because I love the ability to have further impact on the greater sphere of AI. And I love that I can be very proud of what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Sounds like you've been ultra successful. 1.5 million players of your own company that just got you started, then 200 million, then you get to 1 billion. Why are you still working? Surely you got enough money to know what you're doing. What drives you, man?
I don't think I'm ever going to stop. I like having impact. I think I mentioned impact 6 times during that last little spiel. Is that I'm a guy who wants to do things, and I want the world to be a better place for me, having been in it. And it's something I like being able to. I've got 4 kids, and so it's something I like being able to show to them that if you've got passion and drive, and you decide how you want the world to be, for you being in it, that can be a really positive thing.
So who are you then? Are you a gamer? Are you a technologist? Are you I don't know. Who are you?
Yeah. I am a technologist at heart. I believe that the vast majority of the world's problems can be solved with, and we'll touch on this in a little bit, focus technology in an ethical, approach to taking it. So I think that, I think we're already benefiting from some of the best times in human history in terms of access to healthcare, access to, average, quality of life for people. I think there's a lot of things we can do positively. Now, I do obviously think that there are ways you can use it in a bad way. So I'm a big fan of, putting in guardrails, showing the right ways for people to do things as an example for how we can move forward together with technology. Maybe Star Trek might be a better example. Is I believe in the Star Trek future.
Are you still in Brisbane? Or where
I know
you
I'm in Silicon Valley now, so I've been here for about
Silicon
15
Valley.
years.
So you're paying California taxes then.
Unfortunately, yes.
Do you play that guitar over your left shoulder?
I do. Yeah, I've played it since I was in school. Flamenco guitar and finger picking. So whenever I have a hard day and I need to let my brain relax or think strategically or in different directions, just grab it out and pluck a few chords. Yeah.
So how do you I've got to pivot here for just a moment. I'll come back. But how do you find time in your day? You seem like an A-type personality, very aggressive, go, go, go. I tend to be the same. For a while there, and particularly during COVID, it was a different time. I really was able to carve out some time. But I got to admit, as of late, there's always something else that takes precedent. How do you scope that time so you get some time for yourself to play that guitar?
Absolutely. I am meticulous with my time and how I spend it. So I care so much more about quality of time than about quantity of time. So as I said, I've got 4 kids and I make sure that I get time with them. I have, beyond the like normal interactions we have, is I do like one-on-one time with them 3 times a week for 10 minutes for each kid. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but it starts as a minimum 10 minutes and it expands out from there for each session. But it means that I get one-on-one time with them and we get to do whatever they're interested in, whether it's fishing with my 9-year-old, whether it's playing Minecraft with my 7-year-old, whether it's going to the swings with my 2-year-old, whether it's looking at colleges or playing video games with my 17-year-old. Quite a long spread and I'm done, fortunately. But I take the same approach to the rest of my life. Is I intentionally start work very early in the mornings. Most days I start about 5:30 or 6 in the morning, but that gives me the time in the afternoons and evenings to spend with the family. Same thing with how I approach my mental health is and I consider carving out time for yourself part of mental health. So I do maybe another way I really see it is being the best me I can be is I need to have time for myself. And so I find those times, I block things in my calendar. I do a whole lot of stuff where I'm fortunate that I've got a lot of East Coast teams for where I'm at so that I can start early and finish early, so that I've got that time. I've done stuff like I've got a home-based gym so that I don't actually have to leave to go anywhere else. So I can fit my workouts in. I actually do multiple shorter workouts a day because it's more time efficient for me. We could do the whole podcast on this, man.
I know. I think we should. I'm increasingly interested in this, but I got to pause. Did you say that you actually schedule one-on-ones with your kids?
Basically, actually, I have never put it that way. I essentially, it's to give them protected time from me, so I'm not distracted. I'm not busy. Good. I'm not. Yeah, and some of my best memories, like with them and the stuff they talk about, is they love that time.
When do you work out? You work out throughout the day? I mean, look, I usually work out like at 5 a.m.
I like to work out at 5 a.m. if I can, but often it's another meeting gets booked or something else happens. And so I fit it in 15-minute increments multiple times throughout the day as I can fit it in.
What time do you go to bed?
About 10. So 10 to 5. So 7 hours a night.
7 hours a night. As I get older, I'm wanting more and more.
Yeah. Oh, man. I wish I could go to bed at 9 because I know I'm going to get up at 5 either way. But I wish I could go to bed at 9.
I know. I try. Actually, I try, and it never works out. It never works out. And you always feel, I'm actually naturally a night person. Mm-hmm. So when 9 comes around, I'm like, I'm too revved up. I still got time. Then you get up at 5 and I'm like, I wish I'd have went to bed at 9. Mm-hmm. It happens every day. It's like a repeat. Yep. I'm with you. All right. So on the autonomous cars real quick, sounds like you spent a lot of time with that. Yep. I was recently speaking in California, so you see it everywhere, which is really kind of amazing. Yeah. If people around, it is pretty amazing. These things are driving everywhere. Like every corner has got a Waygo. Where do you think this is going? Are we going to all be done driving cars here pretty soon?
I think you'll be done having to drive cars. I don't think there's going to be a lot of places where it makes sense for you to not need a vehicle. We've seen a lot of a trend in some of the younger generations who might be more city-based, maybe you live in San Francisco or Austin. And if you spend the vast majority of your time within a 20 or 30 minute drive, is that that's going to be able to be covered pretty easily by self-driving cars. What's going to be a lot harder for the rollout is things like much larger intercity pieces. While the technology is not very hard, it just becomes logistically more difficult until you've got, if you've got a Waymo fleet in both, say, San Francisco and LA, then you can take a drive down, and you could take a drive down the 5 in a Waymo, because then it just joins the fleet down in LA, so it doesn't have to make its way back immediately. But I think that's like, I predict for my 9, 7, and 2-year-old that their generation is going to be very delayed or very suppressed in the percentage of people who choose to get a driver's license.
What's your safety factor? I mean, if you were to gauge between 0 and 10, how confident are you in the safety of autonomous driving?
Being a data nerd, I love to look at Waymo's recent report, where I think they did, after the first 50 million driverless miles, they were 9 times safer than humans in terms of lower accidents, lower property damage, lower injuries.
So you're all in.
9 times better. Yep. Yeah.
I figured you would be, being in the industry, but
yeah, it's. I think that there's going to be a group of people who just aren't going to like it, and that's absolutely fine. I think that's fair. I think when I think about, for my kids and myself, is I love to drive. So I've mentioned before my Mustang. I love fast cars, love driving. I love getting to a track if I can. That's very rare for me, but if I get to, it's a heck of a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But the level of safety that we've now got, thanks to like NHTSA, the National Highway Transit Safety Authority, the requirements in vehicle builds going up and up and up year over year in terms of the safety, is that dying from a car crash is getting reduced significantly more. I mean, I know we still have a large number of lives lost. A couple of years ago, or a few years ago, it was 35,000 lives lost. However, if you take a look at the percentage of those incidences that had fatality where there wasn't a seatbelt, it was something like half. So
makes sense. I was in San Francisco 3 weeks ago or whatever, and I got into a cab. It wasn't a cab; it was a driver. I had a driver to the airport. Anyway, I was asking him about it. He goes, "Oh, I hate him." I said, "Why do you hate him?" First of all, it's probably competitive, right? But secondly, he was like, "Well, we've had a problem with them just getting stalled in the middle of the intersection." He said, "Yeah, it's been a real problem lately. Now somebody has to come out and get it or something."
Yeah, there's definitely circumstances where you can get that, and I think that's one of those teething issues where. Would you rather it get stuck in an intersection every once in a while? I mean, there's thousands of the things in San Francisco alone. Yeah, they get stuck in the intersection every once in a while, and that's something that's going to improve over the next couple of years. I mean, if you think back to 5 years ago, if you think about your iPhone in your pocket, what's really changed in the last 5 years? Not very much with them. I mean, we're about to see the next jump with AI chips in them, but nothing has really significantly changed with your phone in 5 years. But in the next 5 years for autonomous driving, we're going to still see continued deployment and continued improvement in behavior as well.
What's been your most favorite role? You've had autonomous vehicles, you've had mobile gaming, now you're smack dab in AI. You got PM with Google in there. Of course, it was AI product management in there. What do you think is the most rewarding? What was the fun role? If you could do anything, what would you do?
I think the funnest thing is building teams. And so one of my favorite ones at Sama was I built the product management team from scratch, and I introduced user research as a role that we didn't even have a user research division. And so getting nerdy about like creating amazing experiences for customers and for users is something that I'm really, really passionate about. And that for me comes from not just how you have a team perform, but by intentionally choosing and building teams. I'm a huge fan of the A's hire A's and B's hire C's. And so keeping a team that is all A players is I've never built. Every time I build a new team, I'm impressed with the ability to build an even higher performing team and getting to work with them. Like the people I get to work with it's just phenomenal. Like I love it.
Awesome. So it's about time we jump in then. Sama, tell me about it. What's the company? What's the mission? What's the objective? Where does it stand today?
Absolutely. So we're a mission-driven company. We were originally a not-for-profit, founded with the idea that, as I said earlier, talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. We over-succeeded at doing that and ended up becoming a for-profit company a few years ago, about 5 years ago, to increase our impact. So we hire people out of East Africa who are statistically below the poverty line and give them good paying, we call it living wages roles. And we've got over 50% female representation from our annotation workforce all the way up to our executives. And my boss, the CEO, Wendy, is amazing. And our founder, Laila Jana, was amazing as well. And so what we do is we help AI through creating the data and adding the human element, human insight and human oversight to that. Now, since we've been in this space for a long time, we also can take that expertise that we've developed over the last 15 years and help people who are newer or companies that are newer to this space to really see the potholes, to get out in front of what the problems they're going to solve and get their AI deployed more ethically and more robustly and faster.
So what does that mean underneath the cover, so to speak? I mean,
sure, we do data. We do data for AI.
We do data.
Like that's what
I
we
like
do.
it.
We help.
See, that's what I like.
Make it clean.
You do data for AI. So we're going to have to dissect that. Does that mean you use large language models? You create your own models? You're doing RAG implementations? You're doing fine tuning? What does that mean?
We do all of those. So we help customers say, let's take a RAG system, is we help them fine tune their RAG embedding step with that human in the loop feedback so that it's more, the responses are more human, they're factually accurate, help you reduce hallucinations. On that side, we help train some of the world's largest LLMs. I can't talk about which ones, unsurprisingly, but two of the three of the largest names or that you heard of, we're working on those. We help with making sure that a common trend in, say, LLMs is the creation of synthetic data. So if you take publicly available information like with Llama, they described that for the next generation of the Llama model out of Meta, they actually produced something like 90 or 95% of the training data for the next model with the last generation of model. The problem is what they need to do is to not pass those biases on, is that they have human review as well to make sure that data is clean, it's not biased, and those are the areas where we help and assist.
So let's talk about that a little bit. I will ask about the bias in a later question, but I said I wanted to discuss several topics, and I think you've hit a little bit on all of them already. First topic is de-risking models. You've said that high-quality training data is critical for reducing hallucinations and building reliable AI systems. I know Sama is at the forefront of data annotation. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about training data, and how do you see this space evolving?
Yeah, no, it's a great one. There's misconception that more volume is always better, instead of making sure that the data you're using to train your model on is the right data. So, for example, if you had 1 million images to train something so that it could detect a new class or new something, is it appropriate to use all 1 million? Are some of them going to impart bias into the model? Are they going to make you more likely to detect some types of classes and versus not? And maybe I'll give you a real world example. There is, you take things like some of the gaming consoles, some of the early ones where I think of like Microsoft's Xbox, is that when it was originally created, all the training data that went into it, and sorry, I'll explain what it is. It's a little camera system you put with your Xbox that lets you do dance games and stuff like that, so it can detect your human body movement. When they were originally training it in the earlier generations, is that it was built by a frankly team of white dudes, and so all their training data was really specific height combinations and skin tone combinations, and it actually meant that it didn't perform as well for kids or people of color. And so that's an example where you inherently got bias in your data set, and you can nowadays you can actually solve that in a couple of ways. One is you can either go and collect more data to make, you should look at the data you're using to train your model on, and we can help to say, hey, look, we're seeing a bias in your data here. Here's where in a real world example, it's going to be biased. Or you can use synthetic data to actually add that other classes or other types. So you could have added, women, children, people of color into that data set, but you want the risk in doing that. And I'm going to say this is the trend that I'm seeing is, we'll just use synthetic data and it's a lot cheaper to produce. So great, we'll just do that. If you don't check your synthetic data and the quality of your synthetic data with some humans, then you've got a good chance of just putting systematic bias into it through how your synthetic data was created. Answer your question?
Isn't that yeah, no, it does. And look, I was going to save this for later, but I'm going to bring it up now since you've said it twice, and that's around bias. I mean, what I would term ethical and fair AI, certainly a hot topic, often difficult to do, to pin down in real world systems. I mean, by example, I was joking with somebody this last week because we had an offsite here, and it's an executive offsite. And the funny thing is, I mean, we are so biased, we don't even know it. And one example I always give is you go to one of these meetings, right? We all come in, attend the session for a day, leave, come back, completely new day, completely new presenters. Guess what? We sit in the same spots. I mean, just little things. I mean, that's kind of silly, right? But that's just an indication how we're biased in our thinking. We don't like to change it up too much. Change means more work, whatever. I'll just go back and sit in the same seat that I had before. So I guess my question is, from your experience in working across industries, what practical steps can organizations take to build ethical, scalable, and fair AI from training data on through deployment?
Yeah, no, absolutely. First would be making sure that I'm a big fan of what's called design thinking. So it's a way to have creative thinking about a problem space. And so whenever you're going to go deploy or build and then deploy AI in a space, is before you even get into, that sort of the gritty nuts and bolts of like, hey, I've collected my data and now I'm annotating it, now I'm training my model. You start at the beginning and you ask yourself, what are the risks of bias in this space? What do we think the common causes of bias could be? And you want to set all of that up beforehand. So you want to have ways you could measure it and you can observe it throughout the process. It might be stuff like, oh, we want to make sure that we have good diversity in the data we've collected or the data we're annotating. It might be, hey, what have been historical cases where there's been, let's say, whether it's unethical practices or biased data within this. So I would always recommend you conduct a workshop at the beginning before you actually get in, because once you're in the sort of mode of creating AI, you often, as you mentioned, you end up sitting in the same seat time and time again, where you're like, well, we've collected all this data and this is what data looks like. Whereas if you're doing it beforehand, you aren't biased yet by what you've seen in front of you. Then you want to have systemic ways along the journey to be able to detect bias, where you want to look at things like, hey, for our training data, we want to make sure that we've got good representation of each thing that we're trying to do and detect. We want to make sure that we've got good representation across all the kind of end users of this application, as well as those who might be affected by it. And then finally, you want to continue on once you've deployed, you should have a process of continuous evaluation that isn't just checking against a bunch of tasks you've done in the past. So having humans involved even post-deployment who can provide feedback on, are they seeing bias occurring over a period of time?
First of all, let me back up. I think you need to know where the data is coming from. That's always my motto. What data are you using? Is it trusted? And many of the LLMs out there today don't even show you where their data is coming from, other than it's a scrape of the internet. But does Sama then, do you provide services to help clients out? Or is this tools that you have, governance tools or other? Go ahead.
So we have tools and services that we do. We do it more on a services basis, but we have tools as part of what we do. We typically aren't creating data from scratch. We do in some places, but we would be creating it from scratch and not sourcing it from somewhere that might be, I like the term data laundering, where you see what some of the models are using to create, and they're like, well, we use this information from these research papers, but then we didn't look any further to see if the research papers actually, and what licensing they actually had for the data and whether they could use it in the model. So we're very cautious about being the ones to come up and source the data originally, unless we're creating it from scratch. Then from a tools and services perspective, from biases, we can do reporting on your class distribution, your performance rates against individual types of errors and problems, so that you can use that to dig in deeper as to what might the source of bias be.
I recently read, I don't know if you've read Yuval Noah Harari's latest book. I think it's his latest, Nexus. It's just a brief history of information networks. And the reason what you said makes me think of it is because it really talks to how we've always kind of had fake news out there since the beginning of time. And we think in terms of stories, which makes me think of, the truth that's in the data, the bias, everything else like that, the hallucinations. How are we going to stop this, man? How are we going to stop this?
Hallucinations are a really tricky one. And I find that hallucinations are a really interesting problem, that while we talk a lot more about hallucinations in LLMs because it's easier to fact check them. For example, you might ask like, hey, who's the 23rd president of the United States? And it might give you the wrong answer. But you can go fact check that relatively easily. But we've had this in computer vision models as well. Like we've talked about it as, false positives and false negatives. Like those are hallucinations. Those ones in our, let's say, more easily understood AI of the past, so sort of like computer vision models and stuff, are more easy to sort out the root cause from, where you can look at the training data. Maybe you're missing, maybe you're trying to build a self-driving car model, but you've only got like 200 motorbikes in your data set instead of a million cars. Oh, well, of course it's going to hallucinate about motorbikes because I haven't given enough information yet. It's a lot harder in LLMs, also because the LLMs are just so confident. And so we use this thing called a confidence score that you can get models to produce that say like, hey, this is my prediction and this is my confidence in how likely I think it is to be accurate. And one of the really interesting things about hallucinations is they're almost always up in the really top band of confidence. So when it's wrong, it's wildly confident that it is correct. So ways that we've had a look at this is there are ways you can get LLMs, and I know we want to talk about agents in a little bit, is that you can have them do yeah, exactly, right.
Sorry about that. I hope she's not listening.
There you go. you can actually have models do some post-checking, and you can build other systems that can fact-check some of the predictions that you're having out of models. And so that can help you layer in safety gates to try to reduce hallucinations. But at the end of the day, we have not yet solved that technical problem on completely removing hallucinations. And I think it comes back to, especially for LLMs, the corpus of data they're trained on has more hallucinations than what we're seeing out of the models. I mean, have you ever been on a Reddit thread? Have you ever been on a, like a family chain of conversation, and you're like, what did you just make up? Like, why is this here? And that's the kind of data that these models are also trained on.
Well, that's what kind of worries me, though, right? Because we hallucinate. So we're trying to prevent hallucination from those that hallucinate or tell a fib on purpose for whatever reason. Man, I don't know. And it's so confident. And when you read it, again, we think in terms of stories, we read it as ultimately confident. It's got to be right then. I mean, look how confident that is. Somebody comes across, your desk and says, hey, this is the answer, 100%. You tend to think, well, must be right then. Must be right.
Yeah, no, I think about it in terms of like education. I've been thinking about like, what are my kids going to go through in like how are LLMs going to present in their classes? And I heard an interesting concept of, instead of the schools thinking about how can you stop kids using ChatGPT to write their assignments, why don't you actually have the kids use ChatGPT to write the assignment, and then they have to fact check it, they have to proofread it, they have to enhance it, because this is a tool just like a calculator that while it's much more advanced than that, you've still got like, where's that like interesting cognitive piece out of the human that's needed there. And we see this in the professional industries, is that and we'll talk about job loss and job displacement in a little bit, but I'm not seeing the mass job replacement. What I'm seeing is much higher productivity from people who are experts at what they do, because they can use this stuff to speed them up. But the LLMs can't do it by themselves for the specific domain use case that they're in. And sure, there's going to be a couple of industries that are maybe like customer success and some others that are more likely to have displacement, but I still haven't seen it get to the level where companies are just mass deploying it without backlash and trust issues for their brands that we've still been seeing.
That's why I like to call it augmented intelligence, because I'm with you
That's
there.
A good one. I like that. That's a good term.
I think what's going to happen is, look, I do think there'll be some areas that are replaced. However, for the most part, it's going to be, or it should just make people more productive. Now, I think that's inherently going to alleviate the need maybe of additional hiring into that position because they're more productive. Right. I mean, that's definitely an offshoot as well. But we were talking about this in almost every podcast, actually, that I do. But it's, we've from the inception of time, it seems like we're always talking about how jobs are going to be replaced and we're going to have nothing to do. I'm waiting for that to happen at some point. Whether it's computers, the internet, the industrial revolution, nothing of that has ever come. The phone, the iPhone, it's just made more work for me so far, and I think that's going to continue. So let me talk about another concept, AI-powered data annotation at scale.
Yep.
And this is a question just around how Sama supports enterprise data, what unique challenges you have around scaling accurate, ethical, and efficient data. I actually had a note here that talked about data labeling. We're done with data labeling, aren't we, with GenAI, or is that still the case?
No, I think that's a really good question, because I think for certain use cases, we're totally done. But like Sama's been around 15 years, and some of the stuff that we used to do is now totally been caught up to by humans, by machines and AI. And the approach we take is that we actually take the augmented intelligence approach, where whatever we can automate in a way that still has human oversight and we can pair them together to be more efficient is exactly what we do. So if I think of like image training a computer vision model, I'll have an image that's got, let's say it's a picture of a zoo, and I want to make sure I'm detecting all the different animal types in the zoo. So let's say there's a tiger. I would need to draw a really detailed line out around the outside of the tiger. Now, if that's the way we want to get that data to be really good to train an AI, was it actually what was the benefit of the human? Was it the really fine line that they spent 3 or 4 minutes drawing around the tiger? Was that the value? No, is that their insight, oh, that's a tiger, and by the way, this is the outline of it. And how much time does that really take? If you just think about seeing a picture of a tiger, and I said, hey, what's the outline of that tiger? You mentally have it really, really quick. There's not value in you being able to click on a mouse and being able to slowly click around this tiger to draw it, to outline it perfectly to train the AI. So that's the kind of area that we would target with automation, so that you have the combination of the human plus the AI to make the rich data. Now, the problem is if we just leave it to the AI, then it's just going to pass on any of the biases that it had onto whatever models you're training.
So what's Sama do then? I mean, going back to where the start there, you were talking about mostly services then. So you show clients how to implement ethical, safe, trusted data within your AI so you get the right answers.
Sure. Yep. And data labeling. We still do a lot of data labeling as part of what we do. We call it, whether that data labeling is labeling raw data, whether it's creating data from scratch, whether it's validating synthetic data, whether it's validating model outputs that someone has. So we do a lot of that work as well for data labeling, and it can come in many different forms. You asked me about a bunch of the different ones. We also have our own models to do the AI part, the AI augmented annotation. We use LLMs for it. We use client models. So there's a lot of technology that goes into it. But at the end of the day, it's a technology-enabled services to get you the right data to build the right kind of models that are ethical and fair and balanced, and as bias-free as they can be.
Can't a visual LLM model take care of what you described that requires labeling?
So we use them. So I'm not saying that they can't be beneficial. They certainly can. But what about when they're wrong? So if you've ever used one of these image generations, or you could think of, say, Meta's SAM, segment anything model, it's actually pretty good. And it's pretty good. And that helps us cut down the human requirement by a large percentage. So you can get a lot more data for the same amount of cost than you used to be able to get in those. But still, those models are not producing to the quality you need to train another model to be as good or better than them. So when you get into like these like domain specific areas, these general models that you see, LLMs are very general. A segment anything model is very general. So if SAM, the segment anything model from Meta, is really good at detecting normal traditional day-to-day things. But if I wanted to say train a model that was really good at detecting individual models of cars or individual like something within your own domain that's useful for your business, it's very unlikely that it's going to perform at the level that you need because they're generic. They've been trained on huge, large, broad corpuses of information, and they're trying to learn patterns. It doesn't mean they're like perfect at what you need in your use case.
But they should be getting better over time, yeah? I mean, eventually, hopefully, you wouldn't have to do a lot of that labeling.
As I said, we're already through a lot of it. Yeah. Like we don't manually have to do a lot of it. We have to review it to make sure that we're not passing bias on. What I'm trying to say is that the purpose of what LLMs and these generic models are trying to do is inherently generic, and it doesn't seem to apply super well to domain specific use cases. Like that's where the disconnect is, that they're not trying to get good at every domain.
We mentioned GenAI. Let's talk a little bit about that, if you will, in the real world, so to speak. There's been a ton of excitement, but turning some of that promise into production-ready systems that are affordable can be quite the challenge. In working with GenAI, maybe just carrying on the conversation or answer you just had, what challenges do you often see most often, and what advice would you give teams looking to operationalize GenAI in enterprise settings?
Absolutely. Don't forget that it's trust at the end of the day. Whatever you go to deploy, you're risking your brand, and you're not very many mistakes away from serving huge amounts of damage up to your brand. I always look at why would you want to make these like ethical and bias free and as few hallucinations as possible, is because at the end of the day, this is going to be a user experience and you want to be doing the right thing. And so, especially if you can systematically find these flaws as an end user, those can end up in some pretty bad press, as we've already seen a few come through. You can build systems to help you protect against hallucinations within your space with additional fact checking using multiple models stacked on top of each other. For example, you can also have human in the loop validation of your real world system. So on an ongoing basis, as the real world changes, you can catch if your model generates bias more than it did previously and go and fix that. What I would say the other thing that they should really think about is make sure you're clean on where the data came from and you know what data is going into it, and then deploy it internally first. You should do what I really enjoyed from Google was called dog fooding. You should eat your own dog food and find out if it's good before you send it out into the real world. And so you want to be able to have enough exposure to what your model is doing that you're not going to be revealing mistakes publicly if possible.
All right, let's throw down a couple more, if you will, and then you can make sure that I didn't miss anything. What's one thing you believe about all this AI that others may think is profound or disagree with you on?
That no one else agrees with. That's a good one. I think we're a lot further away from AGI than we think, because while model capabilities are getting a lot bigger, it's they're really learned systems. And so a lot of people think that there's a lot of interesting, let's call it consciousness levels or inherent capabilities. Like as you get bigger and bigger models, you get these like ephemeral behaviors that didn't exist at smaller numbers. And is this like neurons becoming like brain patterns? And I don't think that that's true. I think that what we're going to see along that path is more what you were saying before, is that it's going to be augmented intelligence. And so we have a whole bunch of companies that are trying to run to this replace humans perspective. OpenAI is very transparent about, they're going on AGI. I know other companies actually call Amazon's internal division is called AGI for what they're doing. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to replace humans. I think we're a lot further away from that than people think.
That makes sense. Look, I had somebody explain it to me the other day, and I think this is a good explanation. Like AGI is IQ, EQ, and RQ. IQ, obviously knowledge. EQ is your emotion. Let me try it again. Emotional quotient, and RQ is relationship quotient. The IQ, not too bad. Pretty close. We're getting there. But the EQ and the RQ, light years away. So
it's a lot harder.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the element of where having something that's really high IQ as something augmenting humans, awesome. Let us take care of the majority of the EQ and the RQ, right? Where that's kind of what we're really good at, is we can work with really sophisticated data and insights without having to do let's call it the legwork. And then we can do the other elements that make our experiences more human, more rich, more meaningful in the real world.
Back to Selma then. Why would anybody choose Selma? I mean, what's the differentiators that you have that you say, hey, look, when you're thinking about X, you should be thinking about us?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we really, we've been working with the innovators for 15 years now, from your Fortune 50 companies in almost every industry. If you're coming up and you're deciding, hey, I'm getting a lot of pressure from my board, I know this AI thing is a thing I need to do, we are experts in this, and we've really seen what works, and we can help assist you take that journey in a way that's going to help you get there faster. It's going to help educate you on what you're trying to do, and we're going to get you models that are going to be better off. So that's what we're experts in, is our consultative nature. I would say maybe it's our RQ and our EQ is really good, and we know we've got the IQ anyway taken care of. But I would say we have higher EQ and RQ than what we see out of our competitors.
My experience has been, in working with a lot of clients, it's difficult to characterize easily the return on investment sometimes with AI. How would you do it?
Absolutely. So we actually have a set of workshops that we can run you through to actually help you understand the ROI of what you're going after. So we start from a business value proposition where we say, we abstract the AI away for a second, and we ask, what business problems and customer problems are you trying to solve for or improve? So if you're trying to, let's take retail, for example. So we help a lot with search relevancy and a lot of areas there. We're like, what are you trying to move the needle on? And what's that going to mean for your business? If it's, increase cart size by 20%, you're like, because you'll have better products recommended to you. So on average, you can increase it by 20%. We're like, great. Well, what's that actually mean to you from a cost basis? Okay, well, what's your current off the shelf search relevance? What's the performance that you're getting there? Oh, you're at 82%. Okay. What does each percentage improvement point mean for you? And then we'll take you through a journey where you can take a systematic approach where, yes, it'll be iterative, and you can stop whenever you want. So if you're at 82 and then we help you get, maybe your first batch gets you to 85, you can then go, take some different approaches and go to 87, 89. You're going to understand the ROI that you're getting out of each iteration. However, we'll also be really transparent about the fact that, let's take retail, for example. The world changes really quickly. So like every season, there's new clothes, there's new things coming out. And so your model performance is going to drop over time. So we're transparent about the fact that there's a cost to keeping AI as performant as you can get it, especially in highly domain focused areas. So we help you build into your ROI model. This is the area, this is how much data you're going to be looking at. These are the kind of average training costs that you're looking at. This is the business value you're claiming to drive. And then this is what your maintenance cost is going to be to keep it just at that level, or if you want to grow it further. And I think one of the other areas of ROI that we lack in that conversation is, when can I stop? And it's okay to stop. And so whether you might want to go into, like, do I want to keep trying to improve my model, or am I happy with where I'm at and I'm not willing to keep paying more? So if I think about, trying to take a model from 80% to 82 is a lot easier than trying to get it from, say, 97 to 99%. There's a lot more effort that goes in up there. And so trying to help them understand that as well.
Are you a large language model guy? Meaning, I want it the biggest model I can have to answer many questions, or do you lean into the purpose-built models?
It's a really good question. I like to start with a really big model and distill it down to the smallest model for my domain. And then I like to stick a rag on the side of it. So what I mean there is I want to start with as many parameters as I can to grab as much general knowledge because it gives me a lot of capabilities to start from. Then I want to go through a distillation process where I'm throwing parts of the model away and not focusing on that because I only want to keep the parts that are relevant to my domain specific problem. And then I need something that teaches the model about my specific domain and what I've seen as the best approach, and I'm giving very general advice here, is that by having a RAG with access to your company processes, documents, whatever it is that is special to you, it means that can live and keep evolving and changing over time much faster than you can get iterations of models out. That's my approach.
So it's a little bit of both. You start with big, you whittle it down and put an affordable, purpose-built model into production that has a RAG off on the side. Where do you think Agentic is going to take this?
I think Agentic hasn't been solved yet. I think Agentic's capability to make plans is really good. It's kind of like I don't know if you've seen those memes. It might be showing my particular age group here. Is you've got something that says agent with a face mask. You take it off, and it's just an LLM that you've asked to create a plan before it calls itself. I think agentic AI at the moment is just LLMs on top of LLMs on top of LLMs, and I don't think we've really seen the benefits of what could truly be purpose-built agentic AI. I don't think that really exists as a science yet. So what do I think we can achieve there? I think it's going to be really, really interesting once you can truly hook these systems up where you can use multiple models for multiple things, more domain-specific ones to do different tasks. The big area that I'm seeing is the big hurdle at the moment is the fact that an agent doesn't know whether one of its tasks are correct or not. And it goes back to that hallucination problem I was talking about before. When it's wrong, it's highly confident that it's right. And so the ability to fact check whether the steps of my plan are like, that's what an agentic AI is. Give me something to go do. I'll go create a plan. And then maybe I use a bunch of different services, including myself, to go execute that plan. It can't fact check itself. And if it starts going off the rails, it's very poor at recovering, whereas humans are actually particularly good at recovering. And that's, you get a new piece of software and you got to open it up and it doesn't really look like anything you've seen before, but you kind of know some patterns and you kind of figure it out and you stumble your way through it. Agents aren't good at that yet. And I think that's the hurdle for us to get to like true mass adoption of agentic AI.
One reason I ask is I get a lot of different definitions of agentic AI.
So many.
Right now, I look at them as APIs built around one or more LLMs. But that also means that, it could be a task or a skill that is just surfaced the web. It could be something that uses the LLM. It could be an integration with another third party.
Even a calculator.
I do think
LLMs suck at doing basic math. Like it is way more efficient to use a calculator. By the way, and the cost price of like calling a calculator API, tiny, like hundreds of thousands of the price of running a like big, 700 billion parameter model to do a sum.
Well, that's what they used to start out with. They were saying LLMs aren't that good. Look, they can't answer 1 + 1. I mean, the calculator stuff, it does not do well. It just doesn't. But that's why we have calculators. But that is where you can use agents to call multiple functions and get your answer. So I do think it's going to be a major change as we move forward. I also think it's going to be a major cost driver in terms of running these LLMs, because then you're going to get a ton of tokens.
Did you see DeepSeek's R2 coming out? They're predicting 98% cheaper with similar, not quite as performant as like ChatGPT's, I think it was 04 or the ChatGPT Mini. I can't remember the comparative one, but it was like 98% of the price. 2% of the price to get an inference as it was. And so I think we're going to see, you asked about domain specific models before. I think we're going to start seeing these like littler models that are really good at one thing. And they're just going to be like a calculator. Like, oh, I'm just really good at this one thing. And as we get a big industry of those kinds of models being built and being accessible via API, that's when you're going to start seeing much more effective agentic AI.
But to your point, so I mean, by definition, we're going to head into agentic now because you're going to have these small domain LLMs. And if nothing else, not to mention you could just do other non-LLM tasks. But if you stick with the LLMs, you're going to have multiple LLMs to call. Again, by definition, you're going to have to orchestrate all these different workflows. I think that's definitely coming. And then you've got to really be mindful of what your inferencing costs is.
100. It's very easy. I mean, it reminds me of like, AWS and the cloud, where they set up the model of you just keep spending, don't worry, it'll be fine, and companies just being like,
Yes.
wait, my cloud bill is what? Like this capability of agentic is going to catch so many businesses by surprise when they're like, sorry, we spent how much on inferences? Like, how much does it cost me to get this user experience there for a client?
I don't know that that's going to last very much longer. The industry is wisening up to how to monitor, measure. I'm here at IBM. We produce a lot of those tools, and probably some of our best selling tools are those that do resource optimization and are looking at those costs unlike never before. And speaking of trust, I tend to think people are going to start questioning some of the trust they've had in some vendors. I'm not mentioning any names, given how much they have been charging to this point, or knowingly knowing that they're maybe over provisioned or otherwise. But is what it is.
No.
Before we leave, then, how are you tracking elephant butts? Tell me.
So there's a service down in East Africa where they basically want to eradicate poaching for elephants. And so what they were doing was they were manually tracking the elephants with watchtowers and people, but you can only see so many elephants for so far. And so what there was a company, it was called Project Vulcan. I think it was funded by Paul Allen, I believe was his institute. And what they wanted to do is use drones to track where elephants were in the park, so that you could deploy if you could find things like signs of humans, campfires or vehicles. You could send the rangers out to intercept and make sure the elephants were kept safe. But the hilarious thing that came through from this project was how they were tracking the elephants wasn't just, is it a picture of an elephant? No, they needed to know individual elephants so they could track the migration patterns. And it turns out that an elephant butt with its tail and the shape of its butt is like a fingerprint for an elephant. And so that's how they could uniquely identify them over time. And that was how, in my professional career, I got to observe annotating elephant butts to help reduce poaching.
Nice. That's something to put on a resume, man. You should put, I am tracking elephant butts. That's awesome. So I know you play guitar. I see you sitting in a gaming chair, so you must do a little gaming still. Yep. You're playing with kids, scheduling one-on-ones, being very responsible with your time. What else do you do for fun?
I think that covers most of it. I love fishing. I like hiking. I like driving, especially if I can get onto a track, which is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of the big ones.
With a Mustang? Is that what kind of Mustang you got?
Yeah. So I want to talk about the kind of Mustang I want to have. No, I've got a 6-liter, 2020. It's nothing phenomenal. But what I really want is a GT Shelby 500. I mean, if you've ever seen Gone in 60 Seconds, that's the dream car I sort of want.
Sounds good, man. Thank you. I greatly appreciate you being here, sharing your knowledge with us. Duncan Curtis, everybody, from Sama. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you for listening. Hit us on almartintalksdata@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Please rate us. Take a few moments, rate us, refer us. We'd really appreciate it, even though I'm going to keep doing this, even if you don't. But I wish you would, one way or another. So thank you, and I will talk to you next time. See you on the podcast. See you all. Bye.